Okay, so we've covered the basics of moving objects around. The next logical progression is to talk about actually creating an object. So, like if I go into my polygon primitives, for example, let's say I want a chair, there's no chair object. I actually have to make that chair from something else. Now, the most common way of creating an object in Maya that currently doesn't exist is to build it out of something like a cube or a plane. So a chair is pretty straightforward. Let's actually, what we'll do, it's always a good idea to look up a reference first. So we will just look up a basic kitchen chair. And we'll just go to images. And there we go. Super simple basic kitchen chairs. So why don't we grab something nice and simple. By simple, I mean it's boxy. You can clearly see shapes that look like cubes here. These shapes are slightly more complicated. These shapes are more complicated still. When you're first starting out, I recommend sticking to the boxier stuff. This one's interesting. What I'll do is I'll show you how to create a boxy chair like this, and then I'll show you how to modify what you have to get a similar effect to the wood slats you have in this chair here. So there is our reference, and I'll just move that to my other monitor. Always have reference when modeling, so that becomes our new note here. Always use real world photographic reference during the early stages of, well, during modeling. It's just good practice. Okay, so let me show you how to create this chair. Now I mentioned creating it out of a cube. You can already see that like each of the legs look kind of cube-like. The base of this chair looks like a flattened cube. The sides look like tall, thin cubes that have been bent slightly. The slats back here are thin rectangles, which again, cubes. Long, thin rectangles, cubes. Now, so there's a couple ways we can approach this. We could create each cube separately. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We can create each cube separately, or, which is slightly more standard, we can actually start with just one cube and pull the other shapes out of it, which is exactly what we're going to do. So let's begin by creating the base. So whenever you're doing interpretive modeling, you want to look for, well, what's the root of this object? What's the base of this object? And everything connects into the seat here. So that's going to be the base of my object. Everything will connect into the seat in my 3D version as well. Let's pull that up. We'll put it on my second monitor. Let's create that base first. So I'll create a cube. And we've already talked about moving with the W key here. And scaling. So I will flatten it out. Let's actually, so you can see what I'm seeing. I will just modify my screen here so that we've got our chair reference and our first word sounds like cube here at the same time. I am terrible at multitasking, so this whole concept of like talking and clicking on things at the same time just really doesn't work. Not for me anyways. So let's actually save that image. And we will bring that up on my desktop for you guys. Okay, here we go. There is my chair. Oh, what a handsome chair, right? So I'll bring that up here. We'll expand my Maya window so I can see, you can see that I can see what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So let's create the base of that chair. And I'm just eyeballing it, so I'm just looking at the basic shape. And obviously is quite like, it looks like a flattened cube effectively. So that looks about right. That looks like a flattened cube. There's a couple of interesting things here. So you'll notice that this isn't completely flat. So in Maya, it's totally flat. But this chair actually has a little bit of a dip just in the middle. Nothing is really perfectly straight or flat in real life because gravity is pretty damn powerful. So I do want to add that little dip, and I want to add places to pull the legs down from and the back up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something. So I'm going to add more geometry. Right now there's nowhere, I can't actually grab anything on this to pull it up or down. So I want to create little cubes that I can grab. So I'm going to use something called the multi-cut tool, which is this scalpel at the top of your screen. And you can also find that under Mesh Tools. So if you can't see the windows I'm seeing, which is Edit Mesh, Mesh Tools, and Mesh Display, just check to see if you've got this drop down set to modeling. If it's, say, something else like rigging, those options will be different. So just switch over to modeling. So under Mesh Tools, I've got the multi-cut tool. With that selected, you'll see my object goes blue, and if I hover my mouse over it, lots of interesting things happen. So just a couple things with that. If you're using the multi-cut tool, you need to actually have the object selected. You can have the object selected if it's got green lines, but if it's got blue lines, or when you hover your mouse over it, it seems to hover over only one side of the object at a time. That means you're in component mode. You have the component selected, say just one face, but you don't have the whole object. So you can switch back to object mode by right-click holding on it, and you go object mode. Or you can switch back to component mode by right-click holding and go back to, say, face, which is the component there. So we want object mode, and we will go grab that mesh tool again. So multi-cut. Now, if I hold down Control, so with multi-cut tool active, I'll hold down Control, and you'll see I haven't let it go yet, so I'm still holding it down. I get this highlight as to where it's going to put new geometry for me. And so I'm just going to, I'm still holding down Control, haven't touched anything else yet. I'm just going to hover my mouse so that it's kind of at the edge of the object, sort of like how you can see where there's not a lot. This front leg is not super thick. It's just a small cube. So I'm just going to create basically the side here of one small cube. If I left click, you'll see that it has now dropped a line of edges. And on the side there, I can see that there's what looks like a small cube. Now I do need to add of course this now is a rectangle. So I need to add another one so that I can so I can actually create that isolated cube space. Once again, I'm holding down Control and hovering my mouse over this object. And I'll click again, and there is my little cube. So I can now grab just that cube face and pull it down or up. Now I do, rather than just adding, pulling the leg down and then adding another cube and then pulling the leg down and adding another cube, I actually like to add as much geometry as I need for the next few steps. So I know I'm going to be pulling a leg down from the front two cubes, and I know I'm going to be pulling a leg down from the back two. So I'll just make sure I've got each of my cubes there. So I'll just continue adding all my geometry until what I have is this flattened base with 4 cubes in each corner. So, well, 1 cube in each corner for a total of 4, which I can then extrude down and up. Okay, so let's just pause it there, and we'll close it off and call that introduction to the multi-cut tool. And then the multi-cut tool, and the next tool I'll show you is the extrude tool.